I'm Morgan, 32, a graphic designer who's always felt like the family outsider despite my success. Our annual vacation to Myrtle Beach was supposed to be different this year. I'd helped plan everything, taking time off from important projects to prioritize family. But when we arrived, I discovered they hadn't booked a room for me. What happened next changed our family dynamic forever. Before I tell you what happened, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe if you want more stories about standing up for yourself when family takes you for granted. Growing up with my parents, Barbara and Thomas, I always felt like they favored my sister Caitlin. It wasn't something they'd admit, but the evidence was there in 1,000 little moments. While I built a successful design career working with major clients across the country, Caitlin chose what my parents called a traditional path, marrying her college sweetheart Derek and giving them their only grandchild, my niece Lily, now 6 years old. "Your sister gave us a family," my mother once said during a holiday gathering, not realizing how those words cut through me like a knife. As if my accomplishments somehow counted less because I hadn't produced offspring. My therapist Jillian had been working with me for months on establishing better communication with my family. "They may not even realize how their words affect you," she suggested during our last session before the vacation. This trip could be an opportunity to create new patterns of interaction. I wanted to believe her. I'd throw myself into planning this vacation with an enthusiasm that surprised even me. I researched the best restaurants in Myrtle Beach, created a shared document with activity options for everyone, and even contacted the resort 3 times to ensure everything would be perfect. Taking a week off wasn't easy. My design studio had just landed the Robertson account, a project that could elevate my business to new heights. But family comes first, right? That's what I told myself as I delegated parts of the project to my assistant Tara and promised clients I'd still be checking emails in the evenings. Our airport reunion seemed to validate my optimism. My mother hugged me tightly at the arrival gate, her familiar perfume enveloping me. "Morgan, you look absolutely radiant," she exclaimed, holding me at arm's length to examine me. My father, never one for emotional displays, gave me an awkward but affectionate pat on the shoulder. Caitlin arrived with Derek and Lily 30 minutes later on a different flight. My niece ran toward me with open arms. "Aunt Morgan, did you bring me something from New York?" Her innocent excitement made my heart swell. "Maybe," I teased, already anticipating her reaction to the art supplies I'd carefully selected based on her budding interest in drawing, something we shared. That first dinner together at an oceanfront restaurant felt magical. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks as we shared appetizers and caught up on each other's lives. My father, usually reserved, laughed openly at my stories about difficult clients. My mother asked thoughtful questions about my recent projects. Even Caitlin seemed genuinely interested when I mentioned the possibility of expanding my studio. After dinner, I distributed the gifts I'd brought. A handcrafted leather wallet for my father, a silk scarf from a local artisan for my mother, art supplies for Lily, and tickets to a jazz concert for Derek, who was a music enthusiast. For Caitlin, I'd found a rare first edition of her favorite childhood book, a treasure I'd spent months tracking down. "Morgan, this is incredible," she whispered, running her fingers over the embossed cover. For a moment, I glimpsed the sister I'd been close to before adult responsibilities and geographic distance had created a chasm between us. Back at our rental car, we discussed plans for the week ahead. Beach days, a dolphin-watching cruise I'd booked, the Brook Green Gardens I'd suggested for my mother's love of sculpture. Everyone seemed excited about the itinerary I'd helped create. That night in my hotel room, I called Jillian to share my optimism. "It feels different this time," I told her. "Like they're finally seeing me." "That's wonderful, Morgan. Remember to stay present and enjoy these moments without expecting perfection," she cautioned. I fell asleep with a sense of hope I hadn't felt around my family in years. Maybe this vacation would be the turning point where old wounds could begin to heal. Maybe I would finally feel like an equal member of this family rather than an afterthought. Tomorrow would be the official start of our beach vacation, and I couldn't wait to create new memories together. As I drifted off to sleep, I imagined conversations where my parents would express pride in my accomplishments, moments of genuine connection with my sister, and the foundation of a healthier family dynamic going forward. For once, I allowed myself to believe that the constant struggle for acceptance might finally be over. The resort took my breath away as our 2 rental cars pulled into the circular driveway. Palm trees swayed in the gentle ocean breeze, and the massive glass entrance reflected the cloudless blue sky. A doorman in a crisp uniform greeted us warmly, directing bellhops to collect our luggage. The lobby featured soaring ceilings with crystal chandeliers and marble floors that gleamed under the natural light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. A massive floral arrangement dominated the center of the space, its scent mingling with the faint smell of the ocean. "This place is incredible," I whispered to my father, who nodded appreciatively as he surveyed our surroundings. My mother approached the front desk first, a confident smile on her face. "Reservation for Williams," she announced to the young woman whose name tag identified her as Natalie. I stood slightly behind my parents, watching as Natalie typed on her computer. Something in her expression changed subtly, a flicker of confusion, maybe discomfort. She glanced up, eyes darting between my parents and me, then back to her screen. "Yes, I have your reservation right here," Natalie said, her voice professionally pleasant, but with an undertone of hesitation. "I have 3 rooms booked under Williams." "That sounds right," my father confirmed. "One for my wife and me, one for my daughter and her family, and one for—" "Actually, sir," Natalie interrupted gently, "I'm showing 2 rooms with king beds and 1 room with 2 queens. That's 3 rooms total." A small knot began to form in my stomach as I did the math. 2 parents, 1 sister, 1 brother-in-law, 1 niece, and me. 6 people. 3 rooms. "There must be some mistake," I said, stepping forward. "There should be 4 rooms." Natalie's eyes didn't quite meet mine as she shook her head. "I'm sorry, but the reservation was made for 3 rooms. Would you like me to check if we have additional availability?" "Yes, please," I responded, still assuming this was a booking error. After several minutes of clicking and frowning at her screen, Natalie called over her manager, a middle-aged man named Gregory according to his gold name badge. "I'm checking availability for an additional room," she explained to him quietly. Gregory reviewed the system himself before turning to us with an apologetic expression. "I'm very sorry, but we're fully booked due to the National Realtors Convention this week. We don't have any additional rooms available." My mother cleared her throat. "That's all right. Morgan can stay with us. The pull-out couch in our room is quite comfortable." She said this matter-of-factly, as though it had been the plan all along. The realization hit me like a bucket of ice water. This wasn't a mistake. They had never booked a room for me. "You knew about this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the audience of resort staff. "We thought it would be fine," my father muttered, accepting the room keys from Gregory. "It's just for sleeping after all." From behind us, Caitlin's voice chimed in with false concern. "Oh, is there a problem with the rooms?" I turned to see her standing with Derek, who looked uncomfortable, and Lily, who was busy watching a tropical fish tank in the corner. "Apparently there's no room for me," I said flatly. A ghost of a smile crossed Caitlin's face before she arranged her features into a mask of concern. "Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, we reserved rooms for me, Derek, and Lily since we're a family unit. I'm sure you can make do." There was the familiar sting. A family unit that somehow excluded me. While my parents' and sister's family headed to their rooms, I remained in the lobby, calling nearby hotels in increasingly desperate attempts to find accommodation. Every place was booked solid. "The convention has everything within 20 miles filled up," the concierge informed me sympathetically when I approached the desk again. "This is also our peak season." When I finally made my way to my parents' room, my mother was unpacking her suitcase while my father watched a golf tournament on television. "The couch pulls out," my mother said, nodding toward the living area of their suite. "We'll get extra blankets from housekeeping." "Why wasn't a room booked for me?" I asked directly. My mother sighed, folding a blouse with unnecessary precision. The resort had a 3-room maximum for the discount package. It made sense to book it this way. And no one thought to tell me beforehand? I could have made other arrangements. Honestly, Morgan, you're making too big a deal of this. My father called from his position on the bed. Your sister needs privacy with her family. You're just one person. Just one person. The words echoed in my mind, reminding me of all the times I'd been asked to make do, while Caitlin received preferential treatment. Like the family vacation to Disney when I was 14 and had to sleep on a rollaway bed in the hotel room while Caitlin got her own queen bed. Or the countless holidays where Caitlin's dietary preferences were catered to while mine were an afterthought. I stood in the doorway, suitcase still in hand, fighting the urge to walk right back out. But where would I go? Every hotel was booked. I was trapped here, once again the family afterthought. Fine, I said, the word tasting bitter in my mouth. I'll make it work. Maybe this was just a miscommunication, I told myself as I reluctantly wheeled my suitcase into the corner of my parents' suite. Maybe they truly didn't realize how this made me feel. Perhaps this vacation could still be salvaged if I didn't make a fuss. But deep down, a voice whispered that this was exactly what it appeared to be. A clear message about where I ranked in the family hierarchy. We reconvened for lunch at the resort's poolside restaurant. Palm fronds cast dappled shadows across our table as servers in tropical shirts delivered elaborate seafood platters. I picked at my fish tacos, appetite diminished by the knot of hurt lodged firmly in my chest. So, what's the plan for this afternoon? My father asked cheerfully, as if the morning's room debacle hadn't happened. I thought we could hit the beach, Caitlin suggested. Lily's dying to build a sandcastle. I saw an opportunity to address the elephant in the room. Before we make plans, can we talk about the sleeping arrangements? Maybe we could look at nearby Airbnbs or... Morgan, we've been through this, my mother interrupted with an exasperated sigh. Everything's booked solid. Then perhaps we should consider a different solution, I persisted. Maybe Lily could stay with you and Dad some nights, and I could share with Caitlin and Derek. Derek looked up from his phone, expression suggesting he might be open to the idea, but Caitlin quickly cut in. That won't work, she said firmly. Lily needs her routine, and we need our space as a real family. There it was again, real family, as if my existence was somehow less valid because I hadn't followed the same life path. What does that mean, Caitlin? I asked, tension creeping into my voice. My father cleared his throat loudly. Did everyone see that the Dolphin Cruise has a sunset option? We could upgrade our tickets. The blatant subject change made my stomach churn. This was their pattern. Avoid conflict, pretend problems don't exist, maintain the status quo at all costs. Lily, innocent to the undercurrents of adult tension, tugged at my sleeve. Aunt Morgan, where are you going to sleep? Are you having a sleepover in Grandma's room? Before I could answer, Caitlin jumped in. Aunt Morgan can sleep anywhere, sweetie. She doesn't need special arrangements like the rest of us. The dismissive tone hit like a slap. I excused myself to the restroom, needing a moment alone to collect myself. In the elegant marble bathroom, I splashed cold water on my face and stared at my reflection. Memories surfaced unbidden, creating a mosaic of lifelong patterns. Caitlin getting new clothes while I receive her hand-me-downs despite our family's comfortable financial situation. My parents attending every one of Caitlin's mediocre piano recitals, but missing my design school graduation because it conflicted with their anniversary trip, a trip they could have easily rescheduled. Even my relationship with Jason, my college boyfriend of 3 years, had suffered from my family issues. Why do you keep trying so hard with people who don't appreciate you? He'd asked before we broke up. I hadn't had an answer then. When I returned to the table, the conversation had moved on to beach activities as if nothing had happened. I sat silently, watching my family interact, suddenly feeling like an anthropologist observing a foreign culture rather than a participant in my own family. That afternoon, I tried once more during a walk along the shoreline with my parents. The waves crashed rhythmically against the sand as seagulls wheeled overhead. I need you to understand that the room situation makes me feel unvalued, I said carefully, using the communication techniques Jillian had taught me. When accommodations are made for everyone except me, it sends a message about my importance in this family. My mother looped her arm through my father's, creating a physical alliance. You've always been so sensitive, Morgan. Not everything is a personal slight. This isn't about sensitivity. It's about basic consideration. My father sighed heavily. Your sister has a child to think about. When you have a family of your own someday, you'll understand priorities change. I am family, I said quietly.
Right now.
As I am. They exchanged glances I couldn't quite interpret before my mother patted my arm condescendingly. Of course you are, dear. Now, shall we head back? I want to change before dinner. Later, while collecting a beach towel from the pool area, I overheard Caitlin's voice from behind a row of cabanas. Morgan's making such a production over sleeping arrangements, she was saying to Derek. It's so typical, always needs to be the center of attention. Maybe if she'd settled down instead of chasing her big city dreams, she'd have someone to book rooms with too. Derek's response was too low to hear, but it didn't matter. The damage was done. My sister's words confirmed what I'd suspected all along. This wasn't an oversight or a misunderstanding. It was a deliberate choice that reflected how they saw me. As I stood frozen behind the towel rack, more memories surfaced. My parents forgetting to call on my 30th birthday until 3 days later. The family Christmas photo where everyone wore coordinated outfits except me because we forgot to tell you the color scheme. The family dinner where my promotion at work was acknowledged with cursory congratulations before 20 minutes of discussion about Caitlin's new kitchen curtains. In that moment, standing alone by the resort pool with the afternoon sun beating down on my shoulders, something shifted inside me. A clarity I'd never experienced before washed over me like the waves on the beach. I deserved better than this. I had spent years contorting myself to fit into spaces my family didn't actually make for me. The voice in my head was no longer questioning or uncertain. It simply said, enough is enough. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider what would happen if I simply removed myself from this equation. The thought was both terrifying and liberating. Could I actually walk away from my family vacation? Where would I go? What would they think? But then a more important question surfaced. Did their opinions matter more than my self-respect? The upscale seafood restaurant my father had chosen for dinner featured floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic. Chandeliers made from artistic driftwood cast a warm glow over white tablecloths as a pianist played soft jazz in the corner. Under different circumstances, I would have appreciated the ambience and the menu featuring local, sustainable seafood. Our server, a polished young man named Jonathan, had just delivered the first round of drinks when Caitlin began discussing the next day's activities. We should do the water park tomorrow, she announced, scrolling through her phone. Lily's been talking about it for weeks. What about the botanical gardens? I suggested, remembering my mother's interest. Mom mentioned wanting to see the sculpture exhibition. Caitlin didn't even look up from her phone. That sounds boring for Lily. We need to prioritize activities that everyone will enjoy. By everyone, you mean Lily, I pointed out. Well, she is the only child here, my mother said, as if that settled the matter. I took a slow sip of my wine. I researched family-friendly activities that would appeal to all ages. The gardens have a children's area with a butterfly pavilion. Water park, Lily chimed in, coloring on her children's menu. My father chuckled. The majority has spoken. 3 out of 6 isn't a majority, I said quietly. Caitlin rolled her eyes. Here we go with the math lesson. Morgan, not everything has to be perfectly fair all the time. Nothing is fair all the time in this family, I replied, surprising myself with my directness. Some people consistently get consideration and others don't. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Derek suddenly became very interested in the wine list, while my parents exchanged worried glances. If you're still upset about the sleeping arrangements, my mother began. This isn't just about the sleeping arrangements, I interrupted. It's about a pattern of behavior that's existed my entire life. Caitlin scoffed. What pattern? The pattern of you always feeling sorry for yourself. Caitlin, Derek cautioned quietly. She ignored him, leaning forward. You know what your problem is, Morgan? You think the world revolves around you and your precious career. Some of us have actual responsibilities, actual families to consider. I have responsibilities too, I said evenly. I took time off from a major client project to be here. Oh, your little drawings, Caitlin dismissed with a wave of her hand. Try raising a human being. Try putting someone else first for once. My father cleared his throat. Girls, let's not do this here. But something had broken loose inside me, a dam of words and feelings I'd held back for decades. I put others first constantly, I said, my voice steady despite the emotion churning inside. I rearrange my schedule for family events. I call and check in. I remember birthdays and anniversaries. I listen to your problems and celebrate your successes. When have any of you done the same for me? That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. Isn't it? When was the last time any of you asked about my work without changing the subject after 30 seconds? When have you ever prioritized my needs or even considered them at all? Jonathan chose that unfortunate moment to return for our orders. Reading the tension at the table, he mumbled something about giving us more time and retreated. Look what you've done now, Caitlin hissed. You've made things awkward for everyone. I laughed, a short, hollow sound. That's rich, coming from you. This entire vacation has been awkward since I discovered you all deliberately excluded me from the room bookings. We didn't exclude you, my father insisted. We made practical arrangements based on who matters and who doesn't. I finished for him. Caitlin threw her napkin on the table. Oh, please. Derek and I need privacy with our daughter. We're an actual family unit. The real family here. Parents made the best decision for everyone. The restaurant seemed to fall silent around us, though I knew it was just the blood rushing in my ears. The words real family echoed in my mind, crystallizing years of subtle and not-so-subtle messages about my place in this family hierarchy. I carefully placed my napkin beside my untouched plate, took a final sip of wine, and stood up. If I'm not real family, I said with a calmness that surprised even me, then I'll leave. For pairs of eyes widened in shock. They had never expected me to stand up for myself this way. Morgan, sit down, my father commanded, using the authoritative tone that had worked when I was 12 but held no power now. You don't mean that, my mother said, anxiety creeping into her voice. You're overreacting. Caitlin's expression shifted from smugness to uncertainty. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm making a choice to remove myself from a situation where I'm not valued. I picked up my purse, suddenly feeling lighter than I had in years. Enjoy your vacation. I walked out of the restaurant with my head high, ignoring my father's calls behind me. In the lobby, I requested a taxi back to the resort. The ride was silent, my mind strangely calm as I formulated my next steps. At the resort, I packed efficiently, leaving my parents' room as neat as I'd found it. I left a brief note on the desk. I've made other arrangements. Enjoy your vacation. As I wheeled my suitcase through the lobby, I heard Caitlin's voice. She had apparently rushed back from the restaurant ahead of our parents. This is ridiculous, she said, blocking my path. You're going to ruin the entire vacation because you can't have your way? I'm choosing not to stay where I'm not wanted, I replied evenly. Where will you even go? Everything's booked. That's not your concern anymore. My sister's face flushed with anger tinged with something else. Was it fear? Mom and Dad are really upset. You're being selfish. I laughed softly. Isn't it interesting how setting boundaries is called selfish, but treating someone as an afterthought is just practical? Derek appeared behind Caitlin, looking genuinely concerned. Morgan, let's talk about this. We can figure something out. It's too late for that, I said, not unkindly. Some things can't be fixed with a last-minute compromise. My parents rushed into the lobby, faces flushed from hurrying. My mother's eyes were wide with panic. Morgan, please, she began, reaching for my arm. We can make the couch more comfortable, or maybe your father and I can take the couch and you can have the bed. The desperation in her voice might have swayed me in the past, but not today. This isn't about comfortable sleeping arrangements anymore. This is about respect. We respect you, my father insisted, his voice gruff with emotion he rarely displayed. No, you don't, I said simply. But I respect myself enough to leave. With that, I walked out the grand entrance where a taxi was waiting. As the driver loaded my suitcase, I could see my family watching through the glass doors, their expressions a mixture of disbelief and dawning realization that they had finally pushed too far. The taxi pulled away, and I felt a curious mixture of pain and liberation wash over me. Tears streamed down my face as we drove along the coastal highway, but they weren't entirely tears of sadness. Some were tears of relief that I had finally stood up for myself. "Everything okay, miss?" the driver asked, glancing at me in the rearview mirror.
No, i ensuara't un asli.
But I think it will be. I scrolled through hotel apps on my phone, confirming what I already knew. Nothing was available in the immediate area. Expanding my search, I found a small luxury boutique hotel called the Ocean View in a town 30 minutes up the coast. "Can you take me here?" I asked, showing the driver the address. He nodded, and I sat back, watching the familiar resort area recede as we headed into unknown territory. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts and calls from my family, but I silenced it, needing space to process my emotions. The boutique hotel was a converted mansion set on a bluff overlooking the ocean. Far from the commercial bustle of Myrtle Beach, it exuded quiet elegance. At the reception desk, a young woman with a nameplate reading, "Amber," greeted me warmly. "Do you have any rooms available?" I asked, expecting disappointment. Amber checked her computer. "You're in luck. We just had a cancellation on our presidential suite. It's our last available room." "I'll take it," I said without hesitation, handing over my credit card. The suite would cost more than I'd planned to spend on this vacation, but in that moment, it felt like an investment in my self-worth. "Rough day?" Amber asked kindly as she processed my payment, perhaps noting my tear-stained face. "Family vacation gone wrong," I said with a weak smile. "Those can be the worst kind," she sympathized. "Well, you're in for a treat with the presidential suite. It has a private balcony with an ocean view and a soaking tub big enough to swim in." As a bellhop named Marcus escorted me to my suite, my phone continued to vibrate in my purse. 47 missed calls and texts in the span of an hour. I turned it off completely. The suite was breathtaking, spacious and elegantly appointed with a 4-poster king bed, a sitting area with a fireplace, and floor-to-ceiling windows leading to a private balcony. The marble bathroom featured a deep soaking tub positioned before a window with a sea view. "Will there be anything else, ma'am?" Marcus asked after depositing my luggage. "No, thank you. This is perfect." Alone in the silent room, I finally allowed myself to fully feel the emotions I'd been controlling. I sank onto the plush bed and sobbed, for the little girl who had never felt good enough, for the adult who had continued to seek approval from people unwilling to give it, for the family relationships that might never be what I had hoped. But as the tears subsided, something unexpected happened. A sense of calm settled over me, followed by a whisper of something that felt surprisingly like freedom. For the first time in my life, I had chosen myself over the approval of my family. I had set a boundary and held it. I drew a bath in the enormous tub, adding the hotel's lavender-scented salts, and soaked as the sun set over the Atlantic, painting the sky in brilliant hues of pink and gold. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, in this beautiful room I had claimed for myself, I felt the first stirrings of a new kind of strength. The following morning, I awoke to sunlight streaming through partially open curtains and the distant sound of waves breaking against the shore. For a moment, I felt disoriented, then remembered the events of the previous day and my impromptu escape to this boutique hotel. Instead of the expected regret or anxiety, I felt strangely peaceful. I stretched luxuriously in a king-sized bed, savoring the soft sheets and the knowledge that this entire beautiful space was mine alone. The hotel's restaurant occupied a sunroom overlooking manicured gardens that sloped down to the ocean. White-jacketed servers moved efficiently between tables as a string quartet played softly in the corner. I was shown to a table by the window and presented with a menu featuring local ingredients and French-inspired cuisine. "First time at the Ocean View?" asked a woman at the neighboring table. She was perhaps in her early 40s, with a stylish bob and an easy smile. Is it that obvious? I replied with a small laugh. You have that. I can't believe I found this place. Look. I had it too, my first time. She extended her hand. I'm Rachel, by the way. Morgan. Traveling alone? Rachel asked as our respective breakfasts arrived. Eggs Benedict for her, Belgian waffles with fresh berries for me. It's complicated, I admit it. I was supposed to be on a family vacation, but things went sideways. Rachel nodded understandingly. Family vacations are emotional minefields. I'm solo by choice this trip. Needed some me time after a hectic work year. Something about Rachel's straightforward manner invited confidence. Over coffee, I found myself sharing the room situation and my dramatic exit from the family vacation. Good for you, she said firmly when I finished. Some people never learn to set boundaries with family. They spend their whole lives being the designated doormat. I've never done anything like this before, I confessed. Part of me feels liberated, and part of me feels guilty. Rachel stirred her coffee thoughtfully. Guilt is the tax we pay for doing what's right for ourselves when we've been conditioned to put everyone else first. Her words resonated deeply. After breakfast, we exchanged phone numbers and made plans to meet for dinner, giving me my first unexpected gift of this solo adventure, a new friendship. Back in my room, I finally turned on my phone to find it immediately buzzing with notifications. 47 missed calls and twice as many text messages, ranging from my father's terse call immediately to my mother's increasingly frantic, please let us know you're safe, to Caitlin's progression from angry, way to ruin everyone's vacation, to concerned, seriously Morgan, where are you? I composed a brief text to my parents. I'm safe, but need space to think about how I've been treated. Please respect my decision. Then I silenced my phone again, slipped it into my purse, and headed out to explore the charming coastal town that surrounded the hotel. Unlike the commercial strips of Myrtle Beach, this town featured cobblestone streets lined with boutiques, art galleries, and cafes housed in restored Victorian buildings. At a local tour company, I met Brandon, a guide with sun-bleached hair and an encyclopedic knowledge of the area's history and hidden gems. Most tourists never make it up here, he explained when I inquired about a private tour. They miss the best parts of our coastline. By noon, I was following Brandon along a secluded beach accessible only by a narrow trail through maritime forest. We had the stretch of pristine sand entirely to ourselves, save for a few shorebirds probing the wet sand for crabs. The locals call this Serenity Beach, Brandon told me as we walked along the water's edge. It never appears in the tourist brochures. The day unfolded with unexpected pleasures. A picnic lunch at a lighthouse overlooking the Atlantic, a visit to a local potter's studio where I purchased a handmade mug as a souvenir, and an impromptu wine tasting at a small vineyard tucked away on a coastal bluff. Throughout the day, I posted photos of my experiences on social media, something I rarely did. Part of me, a petty part one wasn't entirely proud of, wanted my family to see that I was not only fine without them, but possibly having a better time. By late afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call from Derek, my brother-in-law. Curious about his calling separately, I answered. Morgan? Thank God. Everyone's been worried sick. I texted that I was safe. I reminded him. I know, but... He paused, and I could hear him moving, presumably to somewhere private. Look, I wanted to call and say I think they were wrong about the room situation. I should have spoken up sooner. His admission surprised me. Derek had always been pleasant, but typically sided with Caitlin in family matters. Why didn't you? I asked, not accusingly, but genuinely curious. He sighed heavily. Marriage means picking your battles. But what Caitlin said at dinner crossed a line. Real family, that was cruel and untrue. Thank you for saying that, I said, unexpectedly touched by his acknowledgement. Where are you staying? Everyone's going crazy trying to figure it out. I'd rather not say right now. I need some space. Derek was silent for a moment. I respect that. Just take care of yourself, okay? After we hung up, I checked my messages again. My parents had moved from concern to pleading, offering to rearrange rooms or even cut the vacation short. Caitlin's messages remained a mixture of indignation and grudging concern, especially after she'd apparently seen my social media posts. "Who are you even with?" her latest text demanded. "How did you find a hotel?" I left all the messages unanswered, a small act of self-assertion that felt significant. For years, I had jumped to respond to family communications, always prioritizing their needs and feelings. This deliberate silence was new territory. That evening, I met Rachel for dinner at the hotel's upscale restaurant. Over locally caught seafood and a bottle of excellent Sauvignon Blanc, our conversation meandered from careers to relationships to family dynamics. "My sister and I have a complicated relationship too," Rachel confided. She was always the golden child, the one who followed the prescribed path. "Does it ever get better?" I asked. "It got better when I stopped expecting her to be the sister I wanted and accepted the sister I had," she replied. "And when I started building a life that made me happy, regardless of family approval." After dinner, Rachel invited me to join a small wine social in the hotel's garden terrace, where I met other guests, a retired professor and his wife celebrating their anniversary, a novelist researching her next book, and a corporate lawyer on a mental health break. As we chatted under string lights with the sound of waves in the background, Brandon, my tour guide from earlier, appeared. He had stopped by to drop off brochures for a local festival but accepted the group's invitation to join us for a glass of wine. Sitting in that garden, surrounded by new acquaintances who knew nothing of my family history or expectations, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. These connections, though temporary, felt more authentic than many of my long-term relationships where I constantly worked to maintain approval. When Brandon mentioned an impromptu beach concert happening nearby, our little group decided to attend together. We walked along moonlit streets to a bonfire on the beach, where local musicians played acoustic guitars while people danced barefoot in the sand. Under the stars, with the rhythm of the music and the ocean as a backdrop, I realized I was genuinely happy, not the manufactured happiness I often projected for my family's benefit, but a real, uncomplicated joy. Later, alone in my luxurious suite, I made an impulsive decision. I would extend my stay at the boutique hotel for another week. I had vacation time available, and the thought of returning to my family's trip held no appeal. I booked a parasailing lesson for the following day and a scuba diving introduction for the day after, activities I'd always wanted to try but had never prioritized. The cost was significant, but I had worked hard for my success and rarely indulged myself. This, I decided, was an investment in my well-being. As I fell asleep to the sound of waves, I thought about how quickly life could change. 24 hours earlier, I had been trying to make myself smaller to fit into the space my family allocated me. Now, I was expanding into my full self, unapologetically taking up space in the world. My phone buzzed one final time with a text from my mother. "Please come back. We can fix this." But for the first time, I wasn't sure I wanted it fixed, at least not in the way they meant, which would inevitably involve me compromising and everyone else continuing as before. Some breaks, I was learning, might be necessary for real healing to begin. 3 days into my solo vacation, I was returning from a morning kayaking excursion when Amber at the reception desk flagged me down. "Morgan, you have visitors in the lobby." My stomach tightened. "Visitors?" She nodded toward the elegant sitting area where I spotted my parents, Caitlin, Derek, and Lily huddled on antique sofas, looking distinctly out of place among the hotel's refined ambience. "They've been waiting about an hour," Amber whispered. "The little one's been through all the complimentary cookies." I thanked her and took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation I'd known was inevitable but had hoped to delay. My mother spotted me first, jumping to her feet. "Morgan, thank goodness." "How did you find me?" I asked, remaining a few steps away from their group. "We called every hotel in a 50-mile radius," my father admitted. "Took us 3 days." "That seems like a lot of effort when you could have just respected my request for space," I observed. Caitlin scoffed. "You can't just disappear from a family vacation and expect everyone to be fine with it." I noticed their eyes taking in my surroundings, the marble floors, the crystal chandeliers, the attentive staff. Their expressions revealed a mixture of surprise and something that looked remarkably like jealousy. "How can you afford this place?" my mother asked, her tone suggesting I was being financially irresponsible. "I have a successful career, remember?" I replied evenly. "The one you never ask about." An uncomfortable silence fell over the group, broken only when Lily ran over to hug my legs. "Aunt Morgan, I missed you. Did you see any dolphins without us?" Her innocent affection momentarily softened the tension. "I did, sweetheart. A whole pot of them." My father cleared his throat. "Perhaps we could continue this conversation somewhere private?" Amber, sensing the situation, approached. "The garden room is available if you'd like a private space for your family discussion." 10 minutes later, we were seated in a sun-filled conservatory overlooking the hotel's immaculate gardens. A server had brought a tea service and discreetly withdrawn, leaving us to our uncomfortable reunion. "You've made your point," my father began in his problem-solving voice. "Now it's time to come back and salvage what's left of our vacation." "What point do you think I was making?" I asked, genuinely curious about their interpretation of my actions. "That you were upset about the room arrangements," my mother supplied. "We understand now. We can switch things around." I shook my head slowly. "This isn't about rooms anymore. It's about a lifetime of feeling secondary in this family." "That's ridiculous," Caitlin interjected. "You've always been the independent one, the successful one. If anything, I've lived in your shadow." I stared at her, genuinely surprised by this revelation. "My shadow? You're the one who's always been celebrated for following the traditional path Mom and Dad valued, while they constantly bragged about your fancy job and city life. Morgan's so accomplished. Morgan's so independent. Do you know what it's like raising a child while hearing about your sister's glamorous life?" Derek placed a restraining hand on Caitlin's arm while my parents looked uncomfortably between us, as if witnessing a tennis match they hadn't realized they were playing. "I think," Derek said carefully, "that there have been some serious misunderstandings on both sides. For the first time, I considered that my sister might have her own insecurities and resentments." The thought was both illuminating and disturbing. Had we been competing in a game neither of us had chosen to play? "Regardless of past misunderstandings," my father said, "the current situation is that we have 3 days left of our family vacation. We've come to bring you back." "I'm not coming back," I said firmly. "I've extended my stay here for another week." Their collective shock was almost comical. "But what about our plans?" my mother asked. "The dolphin cruise? The farewell dinner?" "I've made new plans," I explained. "I'm parasailing tomorrow and taking scuba lessons the day after." "By yourself?" Caitlin asked, as if this were the most pitiful thing imaginable. "Sometimes by myself, sometimes with new friends I've made here." I gestured toward the window where Rachel could be seen reading a book by the garden fountain. "You've made friends?" My mother seemed genuinely perplexed by this concept. "Yes, Mother. I'm capable of forming connections without family introductions." Lily, bored with adult conversation, had wandered to the window. "Can I go see the fountain?" Derek stood. "I'll take her." He gave me a meaningful look before leading Lily outside, as if creating space for the more difficult conversation to continue. With Lily gone, I addressed my family directly. "I'm not coming back to a situation where I'm an afterthought. If we're going to have any relationship moving forward, things need to change." "What things?" my father asked, his tone suggesting he was humoring me rather than taking me seriously. "For starters, acknowledging that my life choices are valid even if they're different from what you value. Recognizing that I'm an equal member of this family, not an accessory. And most importantly, understanding that I won't accept disrespect or dismissal anymore." My mother's eyes filled with tears. "We've never meant to make you feel unimportant. Intent doesn't negate impact," I said, quoting Jillian. "You may not have meant to hurt me, but the pattern has been consistent and damaging." A heavy silence fell over the room. Through the window, I could see Derek and Lily by the fountain, now joined by Rachel, who was showing Lily how to make a wish before tossing in a coin. Finally, my father spoke, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. We've been poor parents in some ways, haven't we? The admission, so unexpected, brought a lump to my throat. Not poor parents, just inconsistent in how you showed love and support. I don't want to lose my daughter, my mother said softly. You don't have to, but our relationship needs to change. Caitlin, who had been unusually quiet, finally met my eyes. The real family comment, that was awful. I was lashing out because I was jealous. Jealous? Of what? Your freedom, your success, the way you've built a life entirely on your terms. She twisted her wedding ring nervously. Sometimes I feel like I rushed into the path everyone expected without exploring alternatives. Her honesty cracked something open between us, a possibility of understanding that had seemed impossible days ago. I've been jealous of you too, I admitted, of how easily you seemed to fit into what our parents wanted. Of your relationship with them. Our parents watched this exchange with expressions of dawning comprehension, perhaps realizing for the first time how their differential treatment had affected both their daughters. So what now? My father asked pragmatically. Now we establish new patterns, I said. I'm staying here for the remainder of my vacation. But that doesn't mean we can't see each other. What do you mean? My mother asked hopefully. We could meet for certain activities, on neutral ground. But I'll maintain my separate accommodation where I'm treated with respect. Derek and Lily returned from the garden, with Rachel discreetly remaining outside. Did Aunt Morgan agree to come back? Lily asked innocently. Derek looked at me, then at the others, reading the room. I think we're working out a new plan, sweetie. What kind of plan? I knelt to my niece's level. A plan where we all get to enjoy vacation in ways that make us happy. Sometimes together, sometimes separately. Like when Mommy and Daddy go on date night, and I stay with Grandma? Exactly like that, I confirmed with a smile. Over the next hour, we negotiated terms that would have seemed impossible days earlier. I would join them for the dolphin cruise and a few meals, but maintain my separate hotel. We would communicate activity preferences respectfully, with everyone's desires given equal weight. Most importantly, we acknowledged that this was just the beginning of a longer process of rebuilding family dynamics. When my family finally left, with plans to meet for lunch the following day, Rachel approached from her discreet distance. Family reconciliation? She asked. More like a ceasefire with terms of engagement, I replied. But it's a start. Those are usually more sustainable than sweeping everything under the rug anyway, she observed wisely. That evening, Brandon stopped by the hotel with information about a local art festival. Our friendship had been developing naturally over the past few days, his knowledge of local culture complementing my appreciation for art and design. Family drama resolved? He asked as we walked along the hotel's private beach path. Getting there, I replied. They came to rescue me today. Brandon laughed. From what? Your fabulous suite and private beach access. From independence, apparently. It terrifies them. As sunset painted the sky in brilliant colors, Brandon's hand brushed against mine, not quite holding it, but making his interest clear. This potential romance was unexpected but not unwelcome, another benefit of my decision to prioritize my own happiness. Over the remaining days of vacation, I maintained my boundaries while cautiously rebuilding connections with my family. Lunch outings sometimes went well, sometimes devolved into old patterns that required gentle but firm correction. My father made unexpected efforts to ask about my work, while my mother struggled but tried to respect my autonomy. Caitlin and I had a breakthrough during a sister-only dinner where, after 2 glasses of wine, we both acknowledged the ways our parents had pitted us against each other, creating a competition neither of us had signed up for. I always thought you had it easier, she confessed. They were so proud of your independence. While I thought they valued you more for giving them what they wanted, I countered. Our laughter at this mutual misunderstanding felt like the first step toward a more authentic relationship. Even Derek showed a new side, pulling me aside during the dolphin cruise to say, "What you did took courage. It's changing how Caitlin and I communicate too." The family dynamics weren't magically fixed. There were still awkward moments and old habits resurfacing. But something fundamental had shifted. For the first time, I wasn't contorting myself to fit their expectations. I was participating on my own terms, and remarkably, they were adjusting. By the end of the week, when we said our goodbyes, they to return home, me to enjoy a few more days of my extended stay, the hugs felt different. Not perfect, but more genuine than they had been in years. This vacation didn't go as planned, my mother said as she embraced me. But maybe it went as needed. For once, we were in complete agreement. 6 months later, I sat in Jillian's office for our regular therapy session, watching autumn leaves dance past her window as I described the latest family dinner. My father actually asked follow-up questions about the Robertson campaign, I told her with lingering surprise. Not just one polite question, but genuine interest in the creative process. Jillian smiled. That's significant progress. Indeed, the changes in my family dynamic since that pivotal vacation had been subtle but meaningful. The transformation hadn't been instant or perfect. Real change never is, but the foundation had shifted in ways that continued to reveal themselves. My parents had begun making consistent efforts to treat my sister and me with equal consideration. When my mother planned her 70th birthday celebration, she consulted both of us about the venue and timing, something that would never have happened before. And how are things with Caitlin? Jillian asked. Improving, I said cautiously. We're talking more honestly than we ever have. Last week she admitted she's considering going back to school for her master's degree, something she's apparently wanted for years but never pursued because she thought it would disrupt her perfect family image. Our relationship remained a work in progress, with occasional backsliding into old patterns, but the foundation of competition had been replaced with cautious solidarity. We had even established a monthly sisters-only video chat, creating space for our relationship to develop independently from our parents' influence. The most profound changes, however, had occurred within me. Standing up for myself at the beach resort had created a template for self-respect that rippled through all areas of my life. At work, I had finally raised my rates to reflect my experience and expertise, something I'd hesitated to do for fear of clients' disapproval. To my surprise, not a single client had balked at the increase. My business was thriving, with a waiting list for new projects and the financial freedom to be selective about the work I accepted. Perhaps most unexpectedly, my casual vacation friendship with Brandon had evolved into something deeper. Despite the geographic distance, he in South Carolina, me in New York, we had maintained connection through regular visits and daily communication. His steady presence and natural respect for boundaries were refreshing after previous relationships where I'd compromised too much of myself. The holiday gathering is coming up, I mentioned to Jillian. The first since the beach incident. And how do you feel about that? Cautiously optimistic, I replied. We've established new traditions. Everyone stays at a hotel instead of cramming into someone's house, and we have a detailed schedule with both group activities and personal time built in. This practical arrangement reflected a deeper philosophical shift in our family, an acknowledgement that togetherness didn't require sacrificing individual needs, and that healthy boundaries enhanced rather than threatened relationships. The journey hadn't been smooth. There had been difficult conversations, moments of regression, and the occasional text or comment that triggered old insecurities. My parents sometimes slipped into established patterns, and Caitlin occasionally tested boundaries with passive-aggressive remarks. The difference was that I no longer accepted such behavior silently. I had learned to respond with calm assertion. That comment feels dismissive. Can you rephrase it? Or, I'm not comfortable with that arrangement. Let's find another solution. Sometimes these redirections were met with resistance, but increasingly, they were acknowledged with respect, a new language we were all gradually learning to speak. Self-care had become non-negotiable in my life. I maintained regular therapy sessions, protected my creative time from unnecessary interruptions, and scheduled periodic solo retreats to reconnect with myself. These practices weren't selfish indulgences, but essential maintenance for my mental health and relationship quality. What would you say is the most important lesson from this journey? Jillian asked as our session neared its end. I considered the question carefully. That respect can't be begged for. It must be demanded through consistent boundaries. And that walking away, even temporarily, can sometimes be the healthiest choice. This wisdom had transformed not just my family relationships, but my friendships, romantic connections, and professional interactions. I had become more discerning about who received my energy and time, more courageous in expressing my needs, and paradoxically, more capable of genuine intimacy when those needs were respected. The following week, my parents called with details about the summer family vacation they were planning, a full year after the fateful beach trip. "We've reserved individual rooms for everyone at a mountain resort," my father announced, "including one for you with a workspace in case you need to handle client emergencies." This thoughtful consideration of my professional needs, something that would have been unimaginable a year ago, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "We were thinking," my mother added hesitantly, "that you might want to bring Brandon if things continue to go well." This inclusion of my relationship, treating it with the same legitimacy as my sister's marriage, was perhaps the clearest indication of how fundamentally things had changed. Later that evening, as I worked on designs for a new client presentation, I reflected on how one moment of standing firm, walking out of that seafood restaurant with dignity intact, had altered the trajectory of my life. The decision hadn't been strategic or planned, but born from a place of authentic self-worth that had been building beneath the surface for years. The truth was that in demanding respect for my family, I had also learned to truly respect myself. In establishing boundaries with them, I had discovered my own unlimited potential when freed from the constraints of others' expectations. My journey continued to unfold in unexpected ways, with continued growth and occasional setbacks. The relationship with my family wasn't perfect. No relationship ever is, but it had evolved into something more authentic, more balanced, and ultimately more loving than the performance of harmony we had maintained for years. As I closed my laptop and prepared for bed, I thought about how many people remain trapped in unhealthy family dynamics their entire lives, never realizing that walking away, even temporarily, can sometimes be the catalyst for profound transformation. The greatest gift of that difficult vacation wasn't the beautiful hotel room I had claimed for myself, or even the newfound respect for my family. It was the unshakable knowledge that I was complete and worthy exactly as I was, with or without their approval. And that knowledge, once gained, could never be taken away. Have you ever had to walk away from a family situation to protect your dignity and self-respect? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are with the people we love most. If my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more discussions about family dynamics and personal growth. And remember, prioritizing your own well-being isn't selfish. It's the foundation for all healthy relationships. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you courage on your own path to self-respect.